Now, I would like to welcome you for this meeting, and my special welcomes to our guest, Mercia Andrews. She is from the organization Rural Women Assembly. They are based, or the office is based in South Africa. The Rural Women Assembly is, it is called in German, it's like a Landfrauenbewegung. So it's a social movement. It's working in about 9 countries, and it is a partner of the international program on the right to food. The focus of them is women in the rural world. Automatically, it is connected to seeds, to land, to other models of agriculture. They have a holistic approach, and they have a vision. The vision is the transformation of the current food and agricultural system. Important is that they want to change it in terms of climate justice and sufficiency. They are experimenting with new ideas, and they're challenging politics and political frameworks. And Mercia, welcome, and thank you very much for being with us today.
So thank you for having me here and giving me your lunchtime. I appreciate it very much. I am going to do what we do in the Rural Women's Assembly, which is every meeting we start with what we call a mystica. A mystica comes from Latin America, and it's about linking us to nature. And in the mornings, when we have a meeting, we'll start with this mystica, or when we have a workshop, whatever it is. And I'm going to pass around this bowl, and each of you will take some seeds from the bowl, because this is a campaign about seeds. And yesterday I was with a farmer here, a small peasant farmer. It was really a powerful experience, and the seeds come from his seed bank. So I am not bringing seeds from far away. I am bringing local seeds to you. These are pumpkin seeds, and please take them, and I hope you plant them in whatever garden you'd like. I pass it on. As you take the seed, think a little bit, reflect a little bit about what you feel, what you think when you have these seeds. For us, the idea of the mystica, the work with the land, the work with seeds and the alternatives is about the methodology of the Rural Women's Assembly. For us, the methodology is about how do we connect or reconnect ourselves with nature, because there's been a big separation between us as humanity in our different ways, with where we come from, and with nature in many different ways. I was fortunate last week to be in a workshop with some of you. And there was one of the sisters who said to me that sometimes she sits in a building like this, all these buildings around us, and we feel very disconnected from nature. But all she does is to go outside and feel the fresh air against her face. And it's a simple thing, but you feel invigorated. And this is, I think, part of what we're trying to do in our methodology, to reconnect, to relink this issue of the consumer and the producer. Because often we buy something, we take it, and off we go home and we cook it. We do not think about where it comes from. We do not think who produced it. We do not think how it was produced. Nothing. So there's this de-link. And part of our methodology is to re-link and reimagine. So this is a way of introducing the Rural Women's Assembly. We started 10 years ago. Those of you who want to know a little bit more, we have a book that is about our short history. 10 years in the cycle of life is a very small moment. So the Rural Women's Assembly exists, as Claudia says, in the region, and it's mainly poor women. It's peasant women, farm workers, some are fisher women, some are peasants, some are small producers, others are cross-border traders. The membership of the Rural Women's Assembly in the region at the moment is over 100,000 members. So it's quite a powerful, big movement. And we have the slogan. We think it's the slogan keeps growing. We have to update it now. It says we are the guardians of land, life, seeds, and love. And the love is about the violence, because in our region there is a great deal of violence against women. But I think in the world there is a great deal of violence against women. So this love is about reminding us that we cannot only think about seeds and food. This issue of respect for life, fighting patriarchy, must be at the basis of all that we do. So this is what the slogan is about. And in our 10th anniversary that we had recently, we were asked to add an oceans. So now we're going to have to say we are the guardians of land, life, seeds, oceans, and love. So that we are beginning to rethink the issue of the commons. So what do we mean by the commons? Because at the moment, the big campaign and the big struggles that we have, like with the seed campaign, the issue of the commons is the fight to stop the privatization. Because every day seeds are being privatized, as we know. Today in a country like Switzerland, there is a big responsibility on progressive movements like this and like citizen movements across the country to raise questions about the role of a company like Syngenta. Why is it that a seed company, 3 massive seed companies, conglomerates in the world, can control 50% of our seeds? Because when you control 50% of the seeds, it means you are controlling 50% of the food. And today, this, I think, is about controlling our lives. It's manipulating us to eat in a particular way, to buy what is in the supermarket. So more and more, we have to push back and to say no to this level of control, to this level of corporate capture. In South Africa, we use this word corporate capture quite a lot. And we think it's only corrupt politicians who capture, etc. But our lives, all of us as citizens, we have to push back about corporate capture. All of us, in one way or the other, we've become buyers of brands. Some of us buy Levi. Today I don't know if I've got a brand, but we buy brands. We've been indoctrinated into this way in which we are bombarded with the media to buy particular brands, to eat particular food, etc. I was walking to your office last week, Thursday morning, and in this train station there were some young people handing out cereal, free packets of cereal. I'm sure you all got the cereal. I took a few packets for us, and then when we got here, the cereal said it's healthy. Eat this cereal, it's healthy, it's got no sugar. probably make us strong and all the rest of it. But once you start to look at what's in the package, I think we must have a new criteria of what is healthy and what is good for us, because the level of sugar content, the level of salt content, the level of preservatives in all these foodstuffs, we must start to question these things. So this is part of what we do as the Rural Women's Assembly, is to raise awareness in society of these things. Another critical issue of the Rural Women's Assembly is to build a consciousness of feminism. We don't claim to be a feminist movement. We think it's too complicated for a movement of so many women from the rural areas to say we are feminist. We say we strive to be feminists, because feminism is an act of consciousness that we acquire. Part of the Rural Women's Assembly, as I said, is about this issue of feminism and how do we build a feminist consciousness, because we have no illusions about this issue of feminism. Because often in the rural areas, and you know this is not only an African issue or something of the global south. Often it is older women who are the custodians of patriarchal culture. They don't even need the men to push them to become the custodians of patriarchal culture. It's often the women who will say, Madeleine, you cannot go out to church like that. Are you crazy? You've got to cover yourself a little bit more, and you have to do this, and you have to wear this, and so on. So there is a role that women often assume. And in rural areas in Africa, this role is a very dominant role. Women have to be prepared for marriage. We have to be prepared for childbirth, all these kinds of things. And so as part of the Rural Women's Assembly, we say we've got to work inside so that we break the hold of patriarchy on our own consciousness. That's quite an important starting point. So part of building a feminist consciousness and a methodology is to create spaces where we can deal with these issues. And sometimes it's very difficult in rural organizations to talk about this. We had a very beautiful, challenging encounter 2 years ago with a feminist scholar. She came to our feminist school, and she said, today I'm going to talk about sex. And you could see everybody didn't want to talk about this difficult topic. It's taboo in rural society in Africa. I'm sure throughout the world, but there it's like a cloak that hangs heavy across came into the room, and nobody wanted to look up, nobody wanted to connect with her. But she was very brave, and she said, today we are going to talk about this difficult topic. And then now it's become more and more an open, we can enter. We cannot enter into all the challenging spaces of this topic, but we can enter into the conversation. We can talk about homosexuality, etc., etc. So the Rural Women's Assembly is opening these difficult conversations in different ways, in creative ways, etc. So I think it's breaking ground. It's quite important. We cannot only see rural women as economic entities, only as people who can be producers of food. We are also women, and we have responsibilities, we have feelings. We are part of a society that must bring all these issues to the fore. And so we use methodologies that can help and open these conversations. Similarly, we talk about care. What do we mean by the care economy? And of course, as rural women, we are the main carers in our society of unpaid labor, of child care, of looking after the sick and the aged and all the problems in society. We are the caregivers, and we talk about this. So this is another aspect, and we try to build this process into the movement. And through the feminist school, the leadership school, we raise these difficult topics and so on. And of course, one of the other critical issues that I think we also deal with quite a lot is the issue of agriculture. But we try to deal with agriculture in I suppose, an interesting, different way, in that we say, for us, all of the women are producers of food. All of the women save seeds and so on. But often in the discourse today, even in an organization like Fastenopfer, we have conversations like we should look at mining. It's much more critical because it's part of the extractive economy, and mining is what makes the world tick, etc. today. We say, but agriculture is extremely extractive. The taking of seeds, the genetic modification of seeds, the taking of people's knowledge, the taking of people's history and culture and food systems, is that not extractive? Should that not be seen as a key part of the extractive economy? Should that not be part of the debate about we have the right to say no to this level of extractivism? So we are saying that we cannot isolate the question of extractivism only to that of mining. Extractivism, agriculture is a central key part, and it's probably the biggest extractive economy, or part of the extractive economy that has taken place in the world. Similarly, we start on the question of transition. And many of you who work on mining here always say, now we must talk about a just transition. I think you know this course. We need a just transition from energy. What's going to be the energy mix for Switzerland? What's going to be the energy mix for, what's the transition from nuclear or whatever the case may be? But this question of a just transition is not applied to agriculture. And surely we should have a just transition from the monocrops and the cash crops and the massive thousands of acres of tobacco fields across the world, isn't it? Should we not have a just transition? How many massive wheat fields or corn fields can we have with that's genetically modified, etc.? So we require in South Africa, I always, those of you who know South Africa, you drive through beautiful landscape, thousands of hectares of wine production. Of course, we all like good wine, red, white, whatever color of wine we like. But how much wine can we actually consume? Because today there is a glut of wine. And so surely we also need to have a discussion about how do we think about a just transition from these kinds of agricultural productions. So in the Rural Women's Assembly, we try to have these new conversations. And we are trying to say that these conversations are not simply conversations for the intelligentsia. It's not only for the professors at the universities who must write about these things. It is very much rooted in our practice. We need to begin to think through these questions as practitioners, as people who are farmers and workers in the fields, etc. And we must shape our own future and our own destiny. And this brings me to the last and critical issue that we also deal with. And I think it's a question that should be the main question in the North. And it's the question of sufficiency. So, I'm hot in this room now. It's very cold outside, I think. And in the last days, I am wearing many layers and so on. But how much is a good heat that we should have? And we can ask this question about how much is needed by us in the North at the expense of us in the South. Or how much can the elite consume at the expense of the poor? How much can males consume in terms of power and knowledge, etc., at the expense of an unequal society? So the question of sufficiency is not just about how much food we can eat. And it is about us as individuals, but it is also about the system. And the system that pushes more and more, the development of more and more, as opposed to the question of sufficiency. And so I think what we require is a much greater thought, greater consciousness about where we are in our world and in our society. And so as part of that, I'd like to end with a slogan, not a slogan, an extract from the Rural Women's Assembly, which I think tries to talk a little bit about our view of where we are in society today. And it says, I quote, "Our focus on who controls land and access to the means of producing food has brought in a strong awareness for us of the way capitalism and patriarchy have impacted on food sovereignty. We have come to realize that our right to land cannot be separated from our right to food and water. By controlling and destroying rights to food, clean water, natural resources, indigenous knowledge, and seeds, capitalism perpetuates violence against society and nature." Thank you very much.
Maybe you can give us some concrete examples on the activities of the Women's Assembly.
So we do quite a lot of different things. We organized in 3 ways. At local level, very much in the village, what people do, at country level, and then at regional level. So at regional level, we have these moments where we come together, and one of it is an annual feminist school, leadership formations, young women's camps dealing with social media and things like that. And then we have political moments, and there are 3 political moments. One of it is an annual assembly, and this annual assembly takes place every year in August. During August, the Southern African heads of state meet in one or other country, and they come together and they talk about some development issue, you know, making Africa work for Africans. I don't know who it should work for, maybe the Chinese, I don't know, but that was last year's topic. So we come to this place, and the women come in caravans to this, wherever the country is. And then we are 300 women, 350 women in this, our assembly together. We come there and we will do a seminar with ourselves, but then we will have an engagement with these governments, with the government. We'll join other civil society organizations. We'll make a protest. Maybe we are demanding against, we have a campaign around the rights of local seeds and no to regulations of the plant breeders and the controls. And then we would make it clear that this is a campaign about defiance. So we did that last year. So we'll bring seeds. You're not supposed to carry seeds now. We'll bring seeds from the region and we will display our seeds and we will exchange and give the seeds to everybody as an act of defiance. And we will say this is our seeds and we're going to give the seeds to everybody. We'll join in a march and protest and hand in our memorandums and so on. So that would be one kind of action. Another action would be around a no to land grabs, for example. And we would again collect the information and we would go into this place and have a speak out. And the women will come. So last year we also did a speak out about climate readiness. So you remember at the beginning of last year there was a very big cyclone. The cyclone hit Mozambique first, and then it hit Zimbabwe and Malawi. Thousands of people were displaced, many were killed, etc. But the truth is that there was an early warning. The government of Mozambique knew the cyclone was coming, but they were not ready. So how do we now force climate readiness? So we make a big demonstration about this. And we march to the Africa Parliament, which is in Pretoria. Our tax money puts all these people in Pretoria from Africa. So we asked, we want to meet those responsible for climate in Africa. Come out to us. Then we discovered that the Africa Parliament has not prioritized climate. So now you begin to see this is an issue we must fight on and so on. So these are the political actions that we take, quite strong actions to protest, to raise awareness of these different things. In many countries it's very difficult to make, in Zimbabwe for example, it is an extremely repressive regime. So how we act in these areas is also, we will take kind of non-violent, we'll stand with a placard, we'll do appropriate things for the different regions, okay? Then we do, October is another big mobilization in the region, because October is International Rural Women's Day and World Food Day, and we also put a lot of spotlight on food and the right to food and things like that. And we do at country level seed livelihood fairs where we make exhibitions of seeds. We show people how to save seed. We give away like this. We give quite a lot of seed, and we promote the idea of planting trees and cooking different food. So we have a big thing about the slow food movement. It's not so much like your European slow food movement. It's less sophisticated. Ours is to say that we have local traditional food. We don't have to buy Kentucky this or chicken that or chicken, you know, all these chicken brands. Those of you who travel into Africa, you'll see every kind of chicken. So we try and promote an alternative. So we would do that, a large part of that. We have a school of agroecology. Yeah. So these are some of the things that we do. We now, women have last year, and we had good success. Women decided to stand in Zimbabwe for political office. And we had, in the first campaign, without any money, 18 councillors elected as individual, how do you say? As independents. No party, not linked to a party, just as the women from the village. So these are some of the things that we do. In South Africa, the women's movement, the rural women's movement, has fought a big campaign around the role of the chiefs, the traditional authorities, because they are trying to control land and isolating women's rights to land and so on. And we made quite a strong campaign against them as well. So we do actions of alternative, but also very strong political actions.
Do you integrate men also?
No. It's a common question. We say many of our members are part of peasant organizations, part of La Via Campesina, part of farmer movements. But women require their own space. Women require the space where they can build their consciousness, gain their confidence, and we don't make any apologies for the fact that we're a women's movement and we want to be a women's movement only.
Not for reasons of justice, but for reasons of success.